Hello and welcome to this webinar, the fifth in our Awakening Your Potential leadership series, 10 Ways to Unlock Greatness with Chad Reyes. I'm your moderator, Jenny Alton from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. Our topic today is role versus identity, and as I just mentioned, our presenter is Chad Reyes, who is an author and renowned coach of Lion's Pride Leadership. This webinar is brought to you by the New York Small Business Development Center network of 20 campus-based centers and many more outreach offices located across New York State, along with a central office based in Albany. The NYSBDC is a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. Our free advising, education, research, and advocacy services are made possible by funding from the SBA, New York State, and our host campuses. So you know, this session is being recorded. We will share a link to the recording with attendees in the next few days in a follow-up email. Attendees are muted and will not be on camera today. Your chats will only be visible to me, our presenter, and our behind-the-scenes helpers. If you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A box as they come up. You can open Zoom's Q&A box from the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll save questions for a Q&A session at the end of the presentation to make sure Chad can get through all of his material today. And I will now turn the time over to Chad.
You have to be awakened that there's more inside of you. You have to be awakened that there's more potential in you. All you need to do is make a decision. This is going to happen. And all of a sudden, things start changing in your life. That's why great commitments precede great achievement. You got to commit to achieve. It's the same thing with athletes. The greatest athletes are able to tap into their mind, to push their mind beyond what their body thinks is possible. Awakening your potential is the key to everything you and I want in our lives. Everything you dreamed of, everything that you say you want is in you awakening your potential. You have potential, I have potential, and let's awaken ourselves to that potential.
Wow. Jenny, thank you so much. As I was mentioning before, we were getting ready to jump into this. This is one of my favorite chapters of the book, and the reason why is that in this chapter I talk about something that I mean all of them have been, a lot of it's been through my life experiences, but this one in particular is one that leaders struggle with, I believe, the most. And I'll give you a quick story. I allude to it more in the book, but in the book we talk about, picture this amazing, I want everyone that's on this just to imagine this. Picture this amazing, beautiful tree that's outside of your home or it's outside of your office right now. Gorgeous tree, beautiful, I mean, just phenomenal. And picture you're watching from the window and you're seeing this beautiful marlin, some of the greatest fish. It's a trophy fish. And you're seeing that marlin struggle to try to climb up the tree. And it's trying and it's trying and it's trying and it's getting frustrated. And all of a sudden, you see this squirrel run over, climb up the tree. And this marlin looks at that squirrel and says, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. The reason why I share that story with you is because most people is that amazing marlin trying to run up a tree. And you and I both know that fish don't climb trees. Fish swim in the ocean. And when you try to get a fish to climb a tree, what happens is that fish starts to think it's stupid because it was never designed to climb the tree. And a lot of people in life, they confuse the role versus identity. I can tell you this, and if you go back on some of the webinars that we've done, you'll see that in the early part of my life, I I made one, very poor decisions, and two, I confused my role and identity. My identity was how much money I had in my bank account. So when my bank account said that it was insufficient, I no longer was valuable. And when my bank account was high, I was more valuable. And that's really not the case. That's your identity can't go up and down based on your bank account, based on your friendship. Your identity is who you are at your core when you strip down all of your titles, when you strip down all of the money, when you strip down everything. Who are you? For me, I'm built in God's image. It says that. So that's my identity, but it doesn't have to be yours. And then on the role side of it is how do you perform in a given area? You know, many of you are probably moms and dads. Some of you may have the blessing of being a grandparent and have grandchildren. You know, others may be business owners. Others may be leading a division in a company. My question is, do you confuse your role and how you're performing with your identity of who you are? You see, the greatest leaders can do well and they're able to separate them well. And today we're going to talk about that. I'm going to unpack it and we're going to discuss it more. You know, I'll share this with you. Robert Kiyosaki, he said this. He said, it's not what you say out of your mouth that determines your life. It's what you whisper to yourself that has the most power. And John Wooden, the famous UCLA coach, he says this. He says, be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think of you. Whew. I want to share this, that there was a study done in Harvard Business Review, and it was basically nearly 5,000 participants. And what they found is that only 10 to 15% of the people that did the study actually said and believed that they were self-aware. And the reason why awareness is so key is because awareness transforms your life. My wife and I have said this for a long time, that awareness will transform your life. And if we're not aware of role versus identity, then how could we ever become the leader that we're designed to be? So I'm gonna start unpacking that with you today. And I'll share this. I believe that, I'm just going to give you like a prediction of where I see leadership going, that leaders that can do well with these two areas that we're about to go into, leaders that do this well will be phenomenally valuable in the future. Leaders that are able to not confuse their role and their identity. So I just want to bring up these couple of quotes. Who you are goes far beyond what you do. That marlin was a marlin, even though it couldn't climb a tree. And part of the reason why it couldn't climb a tree is because it was never designed to climb a tree. It was designed to be one of the most beautiful aquatic animals, fish in the ocean. It's a trophy fish. Recognizing who you truly are is the key that unlocks your God-given potential. So I want to explain this concept right now, because this concept, if you can grab a hold of it as a leader, it'll radically change your life. And think about this now. Your role as a business leader, because I know this is for the business community, so we'll talk about this. Your role as a business leader, whether you're the owner of the company, whether you're working inside the company and you're the newest employee, or you run a division in the company, your role, how are you performing in that role? And your identity, who you are when your titles, your finances, when everything is taken from you, who are you as a person? Are you confident with the person you are as the leader? Now, I want to explain to you this concept here. You ready? This is what happens, and I'm going to give you 4 things that people pitfalls that people do when they confuse their role and identity. But let's go through this. This is what happens. You see that? People confuse their role and identity where it becomes one. If they're performing well in their job, then they're more valuable. If they're performing poorly in their job, then they're less valuable. And my friend, as a leader, our job is we got to build healthy role versus identity. We have to be able to look at ourselves and say, how am I truly performing in my role? There's times where I'm performing really well in my role. There's times when I'm performing poorly in my role. But I can tell you this, that all throughout that whole process of me performing really good or really poorly, my identity is still a 10. I'm still a 10. Because if I'm poor, just hear me out for a moment. If I'm performing poorly in my role, and let's say a 1 to 10, I'm performing as a 4. How am I ever going to get my performance in my role higher if my identity is a 4? If my identity of who I am at my core, when everything's stripped away, is a 4, I'm only going to perform to a 4. My identity will become the lid of the potential for my role. That makes sense? So when we're looking at it, we can't, the world that we live in wants us to have this to be one. And I'm going to give you the reason why. The first reason why is this. It's the performance trap. Because the performance trap is this. If I don't know that I'm a 10 in my identity, then I will work so hard to try to perform at a level that is so high, because I know that if I perform at that level, then my identity, I would think my identity is more valuable. So many people get involved in this vicious cycle of a performance trap. My friend, if we come back to here, we got to do this. We got to separate the two so we can address them very effectively. We could say, how am I performing in my role? How am I performing in my identity? So that you don't get stuck in what I just called the performance trap. Let me tell you the second reason why the two become one when it comes to role versus identity. It's the battle for our attention. I don't know about you, but this phone right here, this phone, all day long you see the world focused on it. All day long you're on the phone. Why? Because the social media platforms, and it's not a good or bad thing, it's just understanding their business model. The more they keep you on there, the more they harvest data. And if they harvest the data, then they can monetize the data. Now think about this. I'm going to come back to this for a moment. Someone who has a very healthy role versus identity, it's a lot harder to move them to buy products and services than it is with someone who's confused role versus identity. Because if your role and identity became one, it's a lot easier for me to say, well, now you need to buy my product because my product solves your issue. Do you hear that? So the second thing that the pitfall here is that there's a battle for your attention, there's a battle for my attention, and good leaders are able to separate the two. Let me give you the third. The third is that we've been conditioned to seek approval from others. As a leader, we want to seek approval from our teams. We want to seek approvals from everyone. We want to seek approval from our posts. You know, I do a lot of speaking, and my wife recently has probably seen me look more at my phone. And what's interesting is because I'm looking to see how the message that we're sharing, how it's impacting people, not for their approval. I'm not they're not going to help me feel like I'm a 10 because they said something great about a message I shared, or because, you know, they didn't like a message. So they said, oh, you're terrible. Your message is terrible. I'm not looking at it for approval. I'm looking at it for impact. And the reason why that's important is we have to be careful that we're not seeking approval from people and we're being so conditioned to it. How many messages did I get? How many likes? How many views? But not for the purpose of impact, for the purpose of your identity feeling better. I was sharing with Jenny before we started. This is a message that I love sharing because this message, probably out of all the chapters in the book, impacted me the most because I had to work through this. I had to struggle through this as a leader. For me to reach my full potential, there was no way that I could reach my full potential if I'm stuck in a performance trap. If my attention, if the battle for my attention is going and I'm not managing it healthy. If I'm always trying to get the approval from others. And then last is what society says. If the society says that you're not valuable, for whatever reason, and mind you, understand this, is that society, media, social media, media channels, all of that, I'm not into politics. Listen, whether you're left or right, up or down, to me, it doesn't matter. But when I'm talking about in society, I'm talking the messages that we hear constantly from media, from social media, from all these platforms. What does it say? And how does that impact your role and your identity? You know, I want to give you the 4 types of role people, okay? The first type is what we call dividers. Now, mind you, it's important because in your identity, you want to choose to always be a multiplier, and we're going to get to that. But what is a divider? When I look at business, if let's say you were on our team and I gave you $100 and you came back and gave me it back as $10, no return on it, not only no return, but you divided it. The result is only 10. And people that have characteristics of dividers, they play favorites, they position people, they refuse to listen to viewpoints, and they destroy the morale of the team. But let's go to what an adder looks like. An adder, you give them 100. Subtractor, you give them 100 and you minus 10, and they give you back 90. I don't know about you, but if we're in business and I give you 100 and I get back 90, that doesn't sound like a good business deal, right? And when you think of the characteristics of subtractors, they're negative by nature. They have low level of effort and appreciation for people and events. And they pull down the morale of the team. Do they divide the team? Do they rip it apart? No, but they pull down the morale of the team. Now let's look at the next one. And before we go to the next one, it's a shift though, because now we're moving into the positive side. You ready? They're adders. You give them 100, they add 10 to it, and you get back 110. Now, that's pretty good. Because these people are typically more positive by nature. They believe that their best years are ahead of them. They go beyond what's asked of them. They add more value instead of taking it. I was just at a lunch meeting right before this, and I said this, and I hope this helps you. Producers produce more than they consume, and consumers consume more than they produce. Think about that. Producers produce more than they consume, more than they take. Producers produce more than they consume. Consumers consume. They take more than they produce. That's the difference between dividers, subtractors, and now moving into adders. And what they do is adders add to the morale of the team. The team gets better because they're on it. But here's the next one. It's multipliers. You give a multiplier 100 and they give you back 1,000. Now, I don't know about you, but in leadership and in business, multipliers are so key because they multiply value to the team, to your customers, to your shareholders, to your stakeholders. What are multipliers? They're positive by nature. And one of the things that I talk about with multipliers is that they don't just have a positive outward experience, they produce results. They produce results. They multiply value. They multiply value of the morale of the team. And they're better because they walked into your life. Like one of the things that I hope Lions Pride and leadership and myself and our team is doing is adding value to your life. Is you walk away from this series and you say, I'm better because I met Lions Pride leadership and Chad and Danielle and their team. Multipliers make sure that people are better. They became better leaders. They got out of insecurities that they used to have. They're now making decisions that maybe they didn't. Multipliers want to multiply value to others. So those are the four. We have dividers, subtractors, adders, and multipliers. And the reason why that's key is that as a leader, our identity has to be rooted in being a multiplier. My friend, if you're a multiplier, you'll figure out ways to add value. You'll figure out ways to multiply value. And if your company is a company that's always doing that, some way or another, you're going to grow. Because you grow, now don't miss this one, you grow not based off of the harvest that you reap. You grow based off of the seeds that you plant. Think about this for a moment. If you plant a seed, right? If I planted a tomato seed today, I may not have a tomato today, but I know for a fact at some point in the future, if I planted it in a fertile ground, that seed, if it was watered correctly, is one day going to turn into a tomato. That's the thing that adders and multipliers do. They plant seeds that eventually add tremendous value. And I hope when you walk away today, you say, my identity is going to be in being a multiplier, being an adder. I won't be in that world where I'm a divider or a subtractor, where people give more to me than I give to them. I want to share this with you because these are areas that you can improve in to build a healthy identity. You know, on the screen here, you can see that the first area, and I want to share with you why it's important to build a healthy identity. People that have a high emotional quotient or EQ and a good identity, they make in their career 3.5 times more money than people who have a low identity. So let's talk about this for a moment. The first area is how they perceive themselves. This is who are they as a person? You know what? I share this often that your viewpoint on me won't change how I think about me. It doesn't mean I won't change how I do things because I want to take in what people are saying, but if for some reason, if you and I met and for some reason you said, you know, I don't like the way he was, or he, you know, your viewpoint is not going to make me less valuable. It may change how I do things so that I be more effective. But too many people's perspectives of themselves is based on the perspectives of others. So if you find me to be valuable, now I'm valuable. If you don't find me to be valuable, I'm no longer valuable. Part of having a healthy EQ is having a healthy perception of yourself. You know, the second part of it is how you express yourself. I think it's key is the better we can express ourselves as leaders, the greater way we'll have the ability to make an impact on others. And one of the things I know is that when we express ourselves, a lot of people can't communicate necessarily audible, meaning the way that auditory, the way I am. But maybe then learning how to express yourself through writing or learning how to express yourself through, speaking. But how can you express yourself will also positively impact your role and increase your ability in your identity. If you could express yourself well and other people can understand you, your identity will be stronger because you'll say, wow, like I know who I am and I'm able to express who I am. So now others can understand who I am. Making sense? The third part is they connect at a personal level. They build good relationships. And that's a big key to being a healthy leader. And that's a big key to having a healthy identity. How do we build relationships and connect with people? The next is decision making. This decision making is so key. I remember a young lady that's on our team, and she's turning out to be a phenomenal leader. And I remember in the very beginning, it was the first week that we hired her. And we had given her a project and we gave her a budget, and she came to me and she said, Chad, what should I do? And I said to her, I said, you have a budget, you make that decision. And the reason why is not because I didn't want to make the decision. I wanted her to make the decision so she can grow as a leader, because I knew that the better she can make decisions, the greater and more confident and more valuable she would feel. Because people that can make decisions have a healthier identity. That's kind of what we're talking about here, role versus identity. And then let's move to the last piece. And we're going to be opening up for Q&A in a few. So bring your questions in, start putting them in the chat box so we can kind of open up for a nice lively discussion. And then the last one is managing stress. It's the ability to be adaptable, flexible, the ability to handle stressful situations. And I will tell you this, you cannot lead well if you think you're not going to deal with stress. If you think that you're not going to deal with stress, you are missing it. As leaders, the reason why I could say I know that you'll be missing it is because I, for many seasons of my life earlier, was missing it. Because I thought that in business, the goal was to avoid stress. The truth of it is you can't avoid stress. You manage it. You do not avoid stress. So people that have a healthy identity, they're okay with stress, but you also got to know how to have an avenue to release stress. For me, what I do is I go in the sauna. I love the sauna. You've probably heard me talk about this previously. I love the sauna because what it does is it reduces my stress level. It gives me some quiet time to really think through stuff. And my wife and I have been in a stressful season in growing and challenging systems and just trying to really take our organization to another level. And I find myself more time than not now in a sauna. Why? Because it helps me manage my stress level. And what is that for you? Because if we're going to build a healthy identity, we got to manage these 5 areas. And I'm excited for the questions because I love the question part when we do this together. I love the questions that come through and the ability to kind of unpack those questions. But I want to share with you the reasons why you want to have a healthy identity. You ready? I'm going to give you 9 reasons. The 9 benefits of building a healthy identity. And I have it in the book. If you have the book, it's in chapter 6. It's at the end. And I kind of unpack them more. But you'll feel more fulfilled. That's a good benefit of having a healthy identity. You'll be more truthful with who you are. You'll be happy. You'll have more peace. You'll be filled with peace. You'll be more self-controlled. You'll be more friendly, caring, loyal, respectful. A healthy identity will magnify those things. And I'm just going to come back to where we were before. This is a big key, role versus identity. When we're as leaders, if we're not managing it well, it will look like this. It will look like that. If we manage it well, it'll look like this. And as a leader, then we'll be able to say, okay, how do I develop my skill set, my competency in my role at work? How do I develop my identity? How do I develop those 5 areas that I just mentioned? You know, we actually have an assessment we use to help develop people in that area so that they can grow in knowing themselves. People who know themselves grow themselves and they develop themselves. So my friend, today, as we wrap up and we're going to open up for questions, I just would really encourage you, don't confuse the two. I did, and I know the pain of it, because when I was doing good, my identity was higher. When I wasn't doing good, my identity was lower. And I had a coach walk into my life and help me with this. And I'm hoping that what I'm sharing with you is helping you and will help your teams as you continue to lead well. So thank you so much. And I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we're going to open up for some Q&A with Jenny.
Fantastic. Chad, before you, if I can have you share your screen again, we wanted to go back, as someone had asked for you to go back to those divider, subtractor slides. So if you could just go through, show those visually again. Wanted to make sure that for anybody taking notes,
there you
they
go.
can get those. So there's the divider one, and then, you know, give people a few minutes and you can head through to the next one. So go ahead back to divider if you would, Chad. And then in a few minutes, I'll have you display that QR code for your survey if people want to.
4 of them, Jenny?
Yeah, so just go through slowly because I think people were wanting to take some notes on some of these.
Okay.
Okay, so perfect. Leave that one up for a minute then. So how important is it to build a personal connection and bond with each person on your team as part of building a healthy identity? This person says that they're a very introverted leader, and so it has been difficult for them to build a solid relationship with each team member outside of just that working relationship.
Yeah. I just had this conversation with someone at lunch. Well, I guess it was an early lunch. You want to call it brunch. But I literally just had this conversation 45 minutes ago. And I said to the person, I said, don't confuse leading and loving. Don't miss that one. Don't confuse leading and loving. I know a lot of people who love people well and they don't lead. I know a lot of people who lead well, but they don't love. Loving people and leading people is so key, because if you love them too much and you don't lead them, what happens is they don't know where they're going. If you lead them too well and you don't love them, they don't think you care. But if you lead them and love them, and I don't mean love from you know, there's 4 types of love, eros and philia, all of that, but I'm not going to get into it. I'm just talking about love, meaning caring for people, having a true care for people. If we lead them, if we love them well and we lead them well, they'll respect you. And you'll see, when you're as a leader, you'll recognize that sometimes you're doing one more than the other. I've gotten into that, where sometimes, Jenny, I'll be loving my people, and in the attempt to love them, I forgot to lead them. And it creates conflict. And then there'll be times where I'm leading them, but I love them, but they don't feel like I love them. Creates conflict. We got to lead them well and love them well. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely. And so to piggyback with that, actually, I'm going to have you share that QR code now. Can I have you do that? Sorry, I know I'm giving you all of these instructions about the slides that we need to see, Chad. So this is, if anybody is interested in doing Chad's survey and you want to get the free first chapter if you have not done it yet. And if you just want to give feedback, if you already have the chapter and just want to give feedback on today's topic, I know Chad appreciates getting that
And
information.
Jenny, and we for those of you, I should have mentioned this on previous ones, when they put their information in, they'll get the free chapter, but we also send out weekly videos on leadership where I take a topic every week and it's a different leadership principle. And I've heard leaders from all over say like, wow, that, you know, every Monday when I get that, it just kind of helps me. So by putting that putting your email in there, we'll also make sure that you get that on a weekly basis. And then there's once a month, we send out articles. It's really all content driven.
Fantastic. And I am dropping in the chat right now a link for that survey as well. If you don't want to scan the QR code or your phone doesn't scan QR codes, there is a link in the chat as well if you are interested in doing that survey. Thank you, Emily, our behind the scenes helper, for sending me that link. All right. So to extend that question that we were just on, you were talking about leading and loving. What is the best way to try to balance leading and loving, especially if you tip towards one side too much? And this person, I think, is saying that they tip toward leading too much.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is this, is that becoming aware of the difference. The first time we had interaction with you, Jenny, and your organization, it was when your state director was at one of the conferences that I was speaking at, and I shared in there that smart and heart. It was an image of a brain and a heart that had hands, and they were holding hands. We naturally lead towards one or the other. We naturally lead towards one or the other. So becoming aware of it, if you more lead towards the technical side of it, of smart, if you're aware of that, then you got to become more aware of how do we the things that I do make sure that people know that I care about them. And then if you lead too much towards the heart side of it and you don't add smart into it, you'll lose people that need the technical side of it, right? Well, one of the things as a leader that I think is so valuable is you got to lead with smart and heart. You got to lead with love and lead. And the reason being is that leaders need both. People need both. They don't need someone to love them but not grow them. Think about that for a moment. If I just showed how much I care about you, Jenny, so much. You're great. I care about you so much. You're great. I care about you so much. You're great. But I don't lead you and I don't develop you. Well, then eventually you say, well, if you care about me so much, then why are you not developing me and helping me? That's the first part. The second part is if I'm always leading and direct and casting vision and strategy, but I'm not letting you know how much you mean to me and I value you, well, then it says I don't care how smart you are. Leaders need to do both of them well. And it doesn't mean that you naturally do both of them well. It means that you have to be aware that your people, your clients, they need both. Your clients need a person who cares about them, but also can bring the technical and the data and all the things that are needed to support, to help them. They don't just want the technical and they don't care about, give me all the technical, but you can be rude to me. No, they give me the technical and I want you to be nice to me and care for me. Team members need the same thing. They want you to lead well and they want you to care well or love well.
Thank you. And I think even just by being aware of maybe what our tendency is on either side, that's part of the battle right there, is just being aware of what we lead with, so then we can help to bring in that other side as well.
Yeah, and Jenny, to that point, I'll share with you that when I'm stressed, I lead more technical. When I'm less stressed, I lead more relational. So, so when in my world, I have to be aware that when I get stressed, it's the reason why I told you I've been going in the sauna a lot lately, because I've been much more stressed because there's a lot of excuse me, a lot of positive things that we're doing, but we're doing a lot of overhaul in a lot of areas, which is creating a stress, but not in a negative way. It's not a bad thing. It's a good stress, but it's still stress. So I got to be aware of it, because when I'm stressed, I lead technical, and when I'm relaxed, I lead relational. And sometimes people can say, well, which one is Chad? Because he's leading technical right now, he's leading relational right now. And I have to be more aware of that as a leader, but it's such an important part.
So we have a very interesting follow-up question too. What about when business partners are family? And do you have any suggestions on this leading and loving when you work with members of your own family? As you do.
I do. Listen, my wife has been my business partner for 18 years, 19 years now. So I get it. And one of our, we own a couple of companies, and one of our companies work with very successful family businesses through these dynamics. So I'm not just speaking from a book, I'm speaking from what we've done for 20 years out of our life, and the families and the businesses that we get to work with. You know, I think the key is that you need to have a common vision. So I'll give you an example. If you don't have a common vision, one of the things that has helped my wife and I so much is that we're on page with a common vision of what we want to accomplish. Now, how we want to get there, sometimes we're not on page. Sometimes I see something more than she does, or she sees something more than I does, but 100% of the time we're clear on the common vision, not how we get to that vision. Sometimes that we have to work. But the key that I've seen is understanding the hat that you're wearing at that moment. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Remember earlier I was talking about role versus identity. So the role, business owner, but that may be from 9 o'clock till 6 p.m. You're the business owner, or the CEO, or the COO. But the second I get in the car and now I'm with my wife, the hat I have on is husband. Now, granted, I still have CEO, and often we have difficult conversations about the business and about performance and about where we're going. But then we leave, and I have to remember, my wife has to remember that she's my wife and I'm her husband. Now, that doesn't make it easy, but you have to be aware of the hat you're wearing, because you want to know what? If I had a difficult conversation in the office about something, let's call it marketing, or let's call it operations, and then I go home and now we're having dinner, and she's hating me because of the conversation I had around the other thing, well, now it ruins your marriage or your friendship or your sibling relationship. The greatest advice I can give is know the hat that you're wearing at the moment that you're speaking. Do you have the hat on of CEO? Do you have the hat on of head of sales? Do you have the hat on for XYZ? Or you have the hat on of mom or dad, hat on of niece or nephew? What hat are you wearing? And sometimes I've had this, my wife has said this to me, I don't like you as my business partner, but I love you as my husband. I'm being dead serious. I'm just being real with you. She's said that to me on numerous occasions. I do not like you as my business partner, but I love you as my husband. And that is, when you're in a family business, you have to be able to work through those. You got to know the hat that you're wearing. There are times where I'm very direct to my wife and business partner. I mean, to my business partner and head of XYZ in the company. I'm very direct. But then she's my wife also. And that, in my heart and in my mind, I never confuse that. I always love her as my wife, but I speak to her in the role that she's performing at. And it's the reason why most family businesses don't make it, is because they can't figure that out.
I mean, do you ever say, hey, I'm going to put on my CEO hat for a minute and I need you to put on your, your hat as well for a minute?
We do. So
Okay.
I've been in conversations in the last 2 weeks where I said to Danielle, right now as the CEO, I'm saying this. And sometimes it could be like, wait a minute. But then I think my wife recognizes, because we've worked on it for 20 years, that I'm basically saying, I'm not speaking to you as my wife, I'm speaking to you as my partner. And I'm looking at it through the CEO level right now. And it's healthy, but not easy. It's not easy. It's because you have so many different emotions that are intertwined, right? And you have to be higher level emotional intelligence to be able to operate in and out of those things. Because I'll give you an example. You could have a conversation with your child, and then that child's in the business now, and now they come in. The conversation you had on your phone was, hey, could you go see grandma and make sure she's okay? That was dad to son or to daughter. But then once that son or daughter comes into the business now and they work in the business, now you're speaking to head of sales, or you're speaking to a person that's doing a role within the company. It's not easy. But the best thing I can say is hats. Know the hat that you're wearing at the time and over clarify the hat that you're speaking to.
Yes. So one of our attendees was laughing, saying, that's why I won't work with family. Because
Yeah,
it's difficult. Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And someone else said, yes, but you can't fire your wife or your husband. So yeah, these are important things to be aware of in that business model, for sure.
Well, can I speak to that for a second, Jenny?
Sure.
Because I think it's important. You can't so let's just say, and this is not my wife and I, but let's just say in general, right? You have a family business, you have a husband and wife, or you have a child and a parent that are in a business, right? And they own the business together, 50-50. Let's make it simple. Son owns 50% of the business, or daughter owns 50% of the business, and dad owns or mom owns 50% of the business, okay? Yes, you can't fire them in their ownership, but you can fire them in their responsibility. Most businesses don't have the clarity between I'm an owner and I work for the company. That's a big difference. I'm an owner, so I own 50% of the company, but I can be fired in my responsibility. Uh-oh. When we understand that, what happens is it creates healthy accountability, because the truth of it is that you can't fire someone from owning them, but you could say, hey, listen, the performance in your role, we may have to hire someone else to do it. You still own the company. You're just not functioning in the capacity of that area of the business. That make sense?
Yes, and I think that's fascinating how you then brought in the role, and versus the identity of this person, and bringing it back to the role, so as to not hurt the person, but address the issue that is at hand. So that's a fantastic clarification. Thank you for adding that.
Family businesses are complex, but I'll tell you what, when my wife and I tell her all the time, I said, babe, we have great ups and sometimes we have great downs. And I tell her all the time, but I would never want to do this without her. If she said, I'm done, I would literally sell all of the companies, because I don't want to do it without her.
Mm-hmm. We had another attendee comment that they've worked with their spouse for 24 years and that it was very hard to learn how to use those hats. But as evidenced by their 24 years, they did.
It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Right. So for those who don't work with family, so this person asked, based on your experience at the start of your professional journey, would you share how you worked on balancing the expectations of family and your own perceptions and how that relates to harmony, how you harmonize that as you were further developing your business.
Yeah, I don't, so I'll share this. You ready? I don't think my answer, I'm going to answer the question because you're asking me the question about me and how I did it. I don't think how I did it would work well for many people, but I'm going to tell you how I did it. I want to give that asterisk right up front. I don't think many people could do it, not because I'm that much more talented, but because it is very untraditional. But I'll share. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in fulfilling purpose and potential. So there'll be seasons in my life that I have to work more hours. Last year, I'll give you an example. To write the book, I had to add 15 hours more per week of work. Now, does that mean that my family is not important? No, it just means that we were in agreement that this was very important to us, to our family, to our business, to the impact we'll make on leaders around the globe. So Danielle and I, we work-life balance is not, it's something that I always push back on because my thing is fulfilling purpose and potential. And everyone has different purpose and everyone has different potential. So that was ours. If someone looking from the outside would look at our week, they would say, that's not healthy. It's not healthy for most people. It's for her and I, it's a very different purpose that we're playing. The game that we're playing is different than many, and the potential that we have is maybe different than many. But that being the case, outside of us, can I answer it what I would say generally to leaders? If this was a question that I'm having in an audience with groups of leaders, it would be this. It would be give 100% to where you are at that moment. That's how you get balance. So let me give you an example. When you're with your kids, be with your kids. When you're at work, be at work. When you're with your family, be with your family. I think the thing that most people do is they rob their relationships because they're not there. So I say this often that when I'm with my nephews and my nieces and nephews, and Jenny, I've shared this, we have 20 nieces and nephews, I give them my attention. More often than not, this cell phone doesn't come out that often. It may come out, but it's not often. And the reason is that I know I don't have much time with them. So I want them to know that they matter to me. So I try my best to be as fully present with them. I'll give you another example. This Friday, I have a young man that I mentor. Danielle and I, he's like a son to us. And Danielle and I are going to, spend time with him on Friday. It's only going to be 4 or 5 hours, but I could tell you this, he's going to get all of my 4 or 5 hours. And then I may not see him for another month or two, meaning personally get together with him. But that's the key. Most people are trying to balance stuff instead of giving 100% of their attention in where they are at that moment. The balancing act becomes really hard because if you're trying to give the work the time, your family the time, all of these times at the same time, you're competing. There's no balance there. Give your work everything, and when you leave, you give your family everything. You give them everything. It doesn't mean that you love them less or more. It just means that you're fully present and fully invested.
Well, and I like that too with the concept of the hats that you were talking about, that, maybe right now I have my work hat on and, I'll switch to my other hat when the time is for that. So that's very interesting, Chad. Thank you.
And one last thing, Jenny, I've seen more families and more businesses destroyed because they can't put their attention at where they're at. So mom or dad, workaholic, they work all day and then they come home and they don't give any attention, or they're with their nieces, their nephews, their grandkids, whatever it may be. And then you have everything else falling apart because they're with their kids, but their body is with their kids and their heart and their mind is at the office.
Thank you for that perspective. So we have just a couple more minutes. I want to make sure that we get to this question because I think it's very interesting for a lot of people, a lot of small business owners in this modern age. So what about remote working environments? What are your thoughts on challenges in better connecting in remote environments, as so many of us have these days?
Yeah. The first thing is this. If you have a remote environment or a hybrid environment, the very, very first thing is make sure that the person can manage themselves that's working remotely. I'll give you an example. If the person, I talk about the 4 phases of leadership. And I may have mentioned it on this webinar series, but the first phase is self-leadership. Second phase is one-on-one leadership. Third phase is team leadership. And then the 4th phase is organizational leadership. So you move from managing yourself well to managing another person well, to managing a smaller team well, to managing the entire organization. That's the phases of leadership, right? Remote work is very hard with someone that can't manage themselves well. So if you're building a remote work environment company, the first thing when you're hiring people is make sure that they can manage themselves. They can lead themselves well. They're accountable to themselves. Because if they're not accountable to themselves, then when they're working remotely, they're not going to be accountable to you. But if they're accountable to themselves, then they'll be accountable to you because they don't need you to micromanage them. I think a lot of organizations look at remote work and just say, is it good or bad? I don't know if I can agree if it's good or bad. I think it's based off of the person. There are many people that I would never want to put in a remote work environment anymore because I know that they wouldn't show up. Some of them would wind up leaving. Some of them wouldn't get the work done. But then there are plenty of people that on our team that work remotely. I don't need to check up on them. I don't need to say, hey, so-and-so, are you doing this? Did you get this done? So it really is based off of, can the person lead themselves well? Because if they can lead themselves well, you could put them working remotely and they'll be able to manage themselves. If they can't lead themselves well while you're managing them, what makes you think they're going to lead themselves well when you're not managing them?
I like that answer too, because I think there's been so much talk about remote work environments versus in-person, which is better since COVID, because that remote work environment became necessary for so many people at that point. And I like that answer because some people do thrive in an in-person environment, and that's okay. And then other people can thrive in a remote environment, and that's okay. There are different ways to be successful. And I like your answer on that of it depending on the person, because it's not one size fits all for everyone.
I really think about it like, it's not, is remote working good or bad? The question needs to be, is the person that I'm putting inside of that remote work environment, do they have the ability to actually thrive in that environment? And I can't answer that question unless you know the person.
Right. It has to be a good fit. Well, we will wrap for today. We are at time. So thank you so much for another fascinating discussion today, Chad, and sharing your accumulated wisdom on this topic. We so appreciate you doing that. And I do want to remind everyone, we will share a recording of this session, as well as a few other things and a follow-up email that will be coming to you in the next couple of days. And we do also have an evaluation that will show when I shut down the webinar here. If you have a few minutes to give your feedback on today's session, we always appreciate hearing from you and finding out what other topics are of interest to our small business community here in New York State. So our next session, let's see, is going to be the 19th. And I know that that is a holiday. We will be recording if you are off celebrating Juneteenth that day. And we have lots of thank yous coming in here in the chat and the Q&A box as well. So thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. Your questions really do contribute so much to these sessions that we're doing, so much to this format. We're grateful to have you and all of your thoughts that help to make these sessions what they are.
Thank you.
Yes.
To you and the team, you guys do a phenomenal job. Appreciate you guys.
It's our pleasure. All right. See you on the 19th, everyone, if you are available. Bye-bye.